Oi, I'm Cybr. We played D&D again today. We are no longer in the Frozen Sick adventure. We are doing Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden. Kind of. So, for the rest of this campaign diary series, if you are here to just know how to run Rime of the Frost Maiden, I'm not going to be able to help you. I'm sorry. Instead, I'm more going feral, completely unhinged from the module, taking everything that I like and can realistically fit in a Eiselcross sort of campaign from Rime of the Frost Maiden, along with picking and choosing bits from some other modules, which I'll talk about later, and just doing a little through line that helps touch on everybody's characters, and ultimately there will be a goal that is similar to the Crisis in Frost Maiden that the characters will hopefully help save the outpost of Eiselcross from, and the wild folk. Man, I'm probably I'm bringing in the wild folk a lot more than Critical Role did, or the Loudmouth book did, honestly, or even Rime of the Frost Maiden did, because I'm not making them a villainous faction really, except for the Wormkin. That's different. Anyway, whenever we last left off, the party had just finished their quest to deliver a cure for the frigid woe, the Aeorian virus that turns people into ice statues. So that was cool. Before we left off our last session, the characters had sort of said the next couple of things that they needed to do. Toph was supposed to be hired by Balenpost to do some sort of job. We haven't really gotten there yet to see what's up with that. Meanwhile, Teague needs to return from the reason why they were in the Green Wildlands in the first place, which was to get supplies for Alawak Sanctuary and Fair Tribe. So the party decided that, you know what, now that we've completed our main time-sensitive job here in Serenia and in Palebank, we're going to go ahead and mark those off. We can realistically make it to Balenpost from here, and the Alawak Sanctuary isn't that far from Balenpost, so you know what? That seems like the next place to go. Holy shit! There's a river of lava between here and Balenpost, and nobody seems to have a good answer on how to cross it with a sled, because we have a sled full of supplies. During our last session, and even starting this one a little bit, I had mentioned that getting from Serenia to Balenpost is easiest done on land, or most people have done it on land, although the trip can also be made on ship. But Serenia doesn't have that many ships, and the few that they do, the characters haven't really been around long enough for them to really gain a rapport with the people of Serenia, which was my way of saying, hey, if you do more quests around Serenia, if you help out the people of Serenia, they're probably going to be a lot more friendly to you. So we started off with the characters taking a long rest. This was the first long rest after they had reached level 3, which means at this point everybody has access to their archetypes. Some people were getting their archetypes for the first time, including Toph, who had taken the Ascended Dragon style from a scroll that the Tiamat cultist in Palebank Village had given them for agreeing to help cure her. We did a little bit of a dream sequence where it was one of those dreams where you only really get flashes of what actually happened. A few descriptions of the elements going through their fists, the blinking of a blue reptilian eye, snow and ice whipping off of towery rocking crabs, a draconic pose etched onto ancient stone before a massive carved wall of ice, a word of approval and praise from an ancient voice, and the last element that I had affecting them was cold. There would be a point where during the dream they would just be like feeling cold, and then they would wake up and realize, oh, they had thrown the blanket off of them, and they're in the fucking Arctic. But also, they have cold weapon breath attacks now. They have all of them, and then they wake up and they hear, or they just have the last word in their mind, Beesil, which is another one of the islands of Eiselcross that has white dragons on it. That'll be fun. Man, Fizman's Treasury of Dragons is a good book. Everybody else woke up and started asking around town. They knew that they were going to start making the trip to Balenpost. Well, they knew that they would need to do it on foot because at this point they weren't going to be able to hire a ship. They were asking around town for like, oh, does anybody like need something delivered to Balenpost? Which there isn't a lot of trade between Balenpost and Serenia, but there's really not a lot of reason to. But we did figure something out. If you've watched Critical Role Season 2, toward the end, to the point where they get to Eiselcross, there is a character called Dagon Underthorn, a guide who's based in Balenpost. They had mentioned that they used to be around Serenia, but it just wasn't for them. I had the character's first NPC, the first NPC that they met in Balenpost, Morgo Delwer, start to go off on an expedition that would be clear across the continent and not be able to come back in time to finish off their coffee. They had coffee shipped up here that she just wasn't going to be able to finish off in time. It would be stale by the time she got back. So I'm just like, well, they've been here for a while. Maybe Morgo and Dagon were friends growing up in Uthadern or around the Green Wildlands. Maybe just Morgo will, whenever asked, Morgo will say, yeah, this coffee that's about to go bad, would you mind delivering it to Dagon in Balenpost? And Justin's just like, hey, we're still thinking of you. We still love you, even though you're off doing some different things. Which I thought would be pretty sweet. She also paid them in silver that she did not count. Because, unknown to the characters, there may be a reason why she's not thumbing through her silver. While going around and looking for jobs, I also like tucked in there that, hey, one of the guys at the docks, at the Serenia docks, who's in charge of like fishing, is having some problems with their ships or their fishing vessels being sunk. This ties into one of the quests in Rime of the Frost Maiden, the one from Bremen. I will not say the name of the quest because it's a spoiler, and I know that my players listen to these, but whenever the characters heard of it, they're just like, if we follow through on this and then we just leave, we're going to be assholes. So we're just going to not deal with that right now. I also did not prep that adventure quite yet and was not ready to run it. But I just wanted to see that was a thing that was happening. And if the characters come back soon, I'll just have that still be a thing that's happening. Instead, the characters started on their trek. It was going to take them 6 days to get across Eiselcross to, or across Foreign into Balenpost. During the first day, I had planned for 2 encounters. I actually ran 3. The first encounter, since, everybody leveled up, everybody had new abilities, and I figured, you know what, we'll have 1 combat encounter where everybody can play with their new stuff. We dropped 2 crag cats on the party, just as they were trekking across the wild. Lots of new stuff. Tav was very excited to use his new elemental punches. Nil, now truly being a phantom rogue, had apparently all of their weapons are haunted now, which is very upsetting for them. I don't think Darius used his archetype ability yet, although did start seeding that, and I tried to also seed a little bit of that as well. I'm really excited to see how that continues developing, because Darius is an Echo Knight. except his echo is his brother who died in this timeline, but he's summoning an echo of his brother from a timeline where Darius died and his brother survived this magical accident, which is going to be very tragic but wholesome. So we went through that encounter. It wasn't super intensive. I kept forgetting that Jacob Diedrich was there because I'm so used to my players rolling the NPCs for me. And I don't think anybody's claimed him yet. But everybody was doing a lot of damage on the Cragcats. The Cragcats' main thing is that like their hide can turn spells. But the only spell that was cast was by Teague, who cast Speak with Animals on herself. Rules is written, Cragcats are monstrosities, but not technically beasts, but Baldur's Gate 3 said, you know what, if you cast Speak with Animals, you can speak to an owl bear. So, okay. They were able to scare the other one, be like, oh, well, we're not prey, we're predators. And we're actually doing a lot of damage to you now. They ended up killing one of the Cragcats, and this other one that was spoken to ran away. And now they have a Cragcat hide that I need to figure out what they can do with. And they were able to go to cook some Cragcat and replenish their rations for a little bit, which is neat. I did say that I ran 3 encounters that day. The other 2 were not combat encounters. I had prepared the second one as just environmental storytelling. They had come across these corpses pretty near the end of the day of some frost giants. 2 of them were very rotten and very damaged. And the last one had really only suffered 1 fatal flow and was in much better shape. They had investigated these a little bit and recovered the frost giant's bag, which had a giant-sized necklace that had dragon fangs in it and a silver claw with a rune in it, or the claw of Wyrmrune, I think, from Storm King's Thunder. The party had investigated the corpses to see if, like, oh, can we determine what was the cause of death? It was very clear on the main frost giant, the one that was in much better condition, that they had a fatal gash across their chest. But these other frost giants were very rotten, very like they had some very old wounds that could not be survived by a living creature, and some fresher wounds that like had dug into the bones and everything. But they weren't able to determine a cause of death, and that's because these other frost giants were zombies, frost giant zombies, which is an Eiselcross thing. There's a fortress in the north of Foreign called the Fortress of the Dead Jarl, where all zombies. And I just wanted to see that thing that like, hey, there are frost giants here. There are also frost giant zombies. The frost giants and the frost giant zombies are not on the same team. And that's something that will come up later. But I just wanted to just like see that and be like, hey, there's going to be a little bit of a loot drop just by investigating this, which is neat. Might help them against the dragon later. The last encounter was kind of impromptu. As they were setting up camp, I had Teague's wildfire spirit, Shyla, see this like blue light on the horizon, not too far away from camp. Teague went to investigate, and Darius went along with them. And they had come across a elemental spirit. In Icewind Dale, Realm of the Frostmaiden, there are these elemental spirits called Chwingas. They're very much like the Kodamas from Princess Mononoke, or the Koroks from Zelda, or the Hickledies from Ni no Kuni. I don't know if in Icewind Dale if they're like native to Icewind Dale, or if they're all like brought over from Chult from Tomb of Annihilation. Doesn't really matter for Eiselcross. The like one text description for the wild folk says that they revere the spirits of the elemental forces in Eiselcross, and it's just like, hey, we have elemental spirits. They're cute. They have little masks and offer gifts. This one just like held out a berry in its little hands, and it was very cute. That was it. I just wanted just like a little wholesome encounter with something. It's a horror adventure, but not everything needs to be horrible. They had all gone to sleep, and Darius had mentioned around the campfire that like he was sort of talking to himself, but like sort of talking to his brother as like a coping mechanism. And nobody else saw anything at the party. I decided to expand on that a little bit and have Darius's brother's Echo just spontaneously be there in the middle of the night as Darius was having trouble meditating, not able to communicate. Because I don't think echoes are really able to communicate, not verbally. But yeah, it was just a fun little scene of just like testing the waters, just like seeing like how far are we gonna go with this? At this point, I don't think Darius has used his manifest echo. I don't even know if that's a thing that he can use yet. I thought it was. Anyway, that'll be fun whenever it comes up. The next day, you came across, and it was nothing really other than a trip through this forest. Now, I don't think there is actually a forest this far north in Eiselcross, but the map that I'm using, the one by Cubase, does have a little forest in this area that they would be trekking through. And I figured this would be a good point to do something with the wild folk, and would just make a nice like small quest to get a little bit of rapport with them. So the inspiration or the thing that I used for this was an article in MCDM's Arcadia magazine from the August issue. And it's an NPC called Eiselcross. They are a warden ranger sort of character that has they have a prosthetic arm and a prosthetic leg. But I was just like, hey, this would be really cool to use as like a wild folk that the party can encounter. And one of the plot hooks that's included in that article, by the way, this is by Sarah Thompson, I believe is also the author of the combat wheelchair, which is also really cool. One of the plot hooks, Eiselcross approaches the characters as they set up camp, seeking their aid in slaying what he calls a dark spirit that possesses an ancient redwood tree in the forest. Its presence poisoned the surrounding woodland, turning the creatures into zombie drones and making the trees aggressive. One such tree attacked Eiselcross, and he was lucky to get away with his life. He believes the dark power is something bigger than he alone can handle. So, I thought that was really fun and something cool that we could build off of. So while the party was resting, they were attacked by a treant sapling and 2 awakened trees. And during the third round of the fight, Eiselcross, who is a halfling in this thing, Eiselcross is supposed to be a wood elf in, as described in the Arcadia article. I thought that it would be good to incorporate him into the wild folk, so I made him a halfling. Not a lot of difference, except that he would have poison resistance and be lucky, and also have advantage on saves against being frightened, or as opposed to against being charmed. But yeah, he showed up on the third round of that fight to help the characters, and man, do I not read stat blocks before making encounters. So one thing that I quickly figured out that was going to be a problem was Aethelfair has a lot of attacks that are specifically dealing in piercing damage. He's a ranger. He's a bowman, so that makes sense. All of his attacks are going to do piercing damage. The Treant stat block, as well as the Awakened Tree stat block, and the Tree Blight stat block, are all resistant to bludgeoning and piercing damage. Does not specifically say magical, but just they have resistance to piercing damage, which makes sense. Shooting an arrow at a tree doesn't tend to do a lot. Although nailing a tree does kill it very quickly. So it was more up to Toph, who now has Fists of Fire, and Teague, the Wildfire Druid, to really lay onto these trees with their fire damage. Treants and Awakened Trees do a lot of damage, which means the characters did need to do a little short rest before they could help Aethelfair find this possessed redwood. So they did, and then they followed Aethelfair to help him take on this corrupted tree. There are so many cool barbarian burial sites that are mapped out in Storm King's Thunder. And I thought that it would be really cool to make this sort of encounter happen in a place that was very similar to Beorna's Well from that adventure. It's this really cool, like, sunken in cave in this, like, in the frozen environment. There's just like this indention where there's like a natural flowing spring, a little raised grove, and just like a lot of cool stuff there. Really fucking cool. I also really like the like legend that they bring out in Storm King's Thunder, and I do think I'm going to use that again. What I wasn't using was the encounter. Instead, I had that corrupted tree be a tree blight, as made famous in Curse of Strahd, and it was surrounded by 5 awakened shrubs that were just going to be, minions. Who typically did not do any damage because rolling a 1d4 -1 is very fun. However, tree blights are a CR7 monster, and I'm using them against a 3rd level party. And I forgot that the CR5 NPC that we brought in, Aethelfair, is, again, the tree blight is resistant to most of his damage. So, we scaled back the tree blight's hit points, and as soon as it got bloody, it was going down. But tree blights do a lot of fucking damage. It was, every time a character got close to it, it was doing like 20 points of damage, which did knock out a couple of characters. But hey, they survived. They were able to put a stop to this, and that's where we called it. And it was very tense. It was a very tense fight, but it felt like everybody was still having a lot of fun doing it. And you know what? I'm calling it a success. So that's where we left off. The party had finished helping Aethelfair in this quest, putting to rest the corruption that was happening in that forest. During our next session, we're going to pick it up there, where they can maybe get a little bit more details on what happened there, and maybe get a few like plot hooks, or not like plot hooks, but like some rumors and stuff from Aethelfair, who's very familiar with what's happening in Eiselcross. One thing that I do want him to bring up is that there are these magical storms that are happening from Schneasel that are getting worse, and they're doing a significant amount of damage. this is the crisis that's going to continue happening. That it is going to be pretty synonymous or analogous. One of those words is correct, I'm sure, to the endless winter from Rime of the Frost Maiden. This is the thing that's going to need to be stopped, and it's going to need to be stopped by going into the lost frozen city. In this case, Aeor, instead of Aetherin. That's a future problem, though. That's the overarching crisis that is going to be a constant threat, but it's not. I don't see it being a focus for the characters. I say that that's probably going to be what they latch onto, and I'm not going to be upset about that. But I've also really, whenever we left off, I had the tree sort of like wither away, doing that sort of like plant thing where it sort of like dries up and shrivels on itself. But within that plant was this sort of humanoid shape that may have been the reason why this tree blight was the way that it was. My sort of idea for what happened there was something had caused an Aeorian artifact, in this case, a Staff of the Woodlands, or something similar to a Staff of the Woodlands that was held by a Serenia explorer, to activate. A Staff of the Woodlands has an ability where if you plant it in the ground, it will turn into a tree. If you've seen Critical Role, this is what Caduceus does at the top of the Jor house to make the tree house, you know? There is a very big through line of corrupted Aeorian trees that happens there and on the mainland. But I sort of just wanted this to be like, hey, this artifact, this Staff of the Woodlands, it malfunctioned. It caused the tree plant thing to start immediately happening, and it enveloped this guy in it. And now he's in constant pain and is sort of just like reaching out, and the magic of the staff is causing other plants to animate and attack people. And man, that needs to be stopped. Ooh, lots of horror shit happening there. But once the players finish that, I'm not sure if they'll decide to rest here, because this is a nice safe place for them to be able to return to. And if they decide to start using the fast travel map, if they get this marked down, this is definitely going to be a place where they're going to be able to get back to pretty quickly. But yeah, they're going to continue on their trip. The next few things that I have for them are just a couple of other encounters. I'm not going to talk about them too much, but one of the things is they are going to need to cross the River Inferno, and they will need to encounter at least one of these very harsh magical blizzards. And maybe finally throw in some of those Icewind Dale monsters that just lean a little bit more into the survival horror aspect. Then eventually they will make it into Balenpost, where I do have a little bit more planned for the job. I just need to get a few characters' motivations like fully set up and arrange all the pieces on the board. I would go into more detail, but I don't have a lot of the details set up yet, and I should probably take the time that I would be spending editing this video to set those up and to think about those. But yeah, that's where we're at in in our D&D game. Rime of the Frost Maiden, not really. Eiselcross, Rime of the Ancient Magisters. Love me a pun. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. I think we're coming back to it next week. And yeah, we will see what happens on the rest of the way to Balenpost. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you did. And I will see y'all next time. Bye!